breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson. Now part of the Beast Family Podcast. We've got a tremendous podcast for you as we're going to be joined in segment number 2 by Danny Vietti. He does great work over at CBS Sports, taking a look at this game that we all know and love. We're going to be chatting with him about some of the teams and players that he has his eye on for the upcoming season, what to take a look at for the San Diego Padres, whether or not the LA Angels, who lost opening day, are actually going to be able to get Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout to the playoffs, and so much more. So we're going to be having that conversation in segment number 2. In the final segment, going to give you guys picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this MLB Saturday as we touch them all. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways to be able to throw those in. First one is my Twitter timeline at unit_D1. Keep in mind, letters EM. Name does not matter. As per usual, please do send these into the timeline. Other ways, find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Really did not get in any Twitter questions today, most likely because we had just 5 games of baseball on Friday. So let's take a look back at those and got a little bit of cleanup from the West Coast games on Thursday. So we're going to recap that, try to find some trends, and try to get to know these teams a little bit better.
Games from yesterday is Greg buzzing about. Here is the rowdy recap.
The Padres are off to an 0-2 start as Thursday night they lost to the Colorado Rockies by a count of 7-2, and then they lose Friday night by a count of 4-1. So just 3 runs for the Padres in their first 2 games. And for Colorado, they had CJ Cron go off night number 1, 2 home runs for him, his first and second of the campaign. He had 29 all of last year, but just 7 of them came on the road. I do think that Colorado probably being positively affected by the fact that they have yet to play any of their series out at Coors Field. But German Marquez on night number 1, 2 runs surrendered in 6 innings, and then Dinelson Lamet, Jake Bird, along with Justin Lawrence were able to close down the fort, all giving you a scoreless inning. And for Blake Snell, 3 runs surrendered in 4 1/3 innings, 9 strikeouts, but got tattooed pretty hard. And then Abel Christmas, he gave up a home run in 1 2/3 innings, and Domingo Tapia, 2 innings, 2 solo home runs surrendered before Steven Wilson able to hold down the fort and able to get a solid scoreless inning as another home run was had in this one, as one of those home runs that Tapia gave up, Eliurias Montero took him deep for home run number 1 of the campaign. And then in terms of the Friday game, in which Colorado was able to get it done by a count of 4-1, very similar size underdog, Kyle Freeland, he was just on his game. 6 scoreless innings. Right hand does give up a run in an inning, but Brent Suter, Pierce Johnson, they both hold it down scoreless as Charlie Blackmon had the deep fly in this one. His first of the campaign off of Nick Martinez, who gave up 4 runs in 7 innings, including that bomb. Tim Hill, Luis Garcia both provide a scoreless inning, but for the Padres on Friday, 0 of 6 with men in scoring position. The Guardians and the Seattle Mariners have split to begin the year, as the Mariners got it done 3-0 night number 1, and then the Guardians got payback by a count of 9-4 on Friday. In the 9-4 win for the Guardians, no home runs, but they just played small ball. 6 of 17 with men in scoring position, 3 different players at a stolen base, as they took the wholesale approach. Hunter Gaddis, not the start that they were looking for out of him. 4 runs surrendered in 3 2/3 innings, but Guardians were 5th in the league in bullpen ERA for a reason. Eli Morgan, Aniel De Los Santos, Trevor Stephen, Emmanuel Clase all provided scoreless inning, and Nick Sandlin 1 1/3 inning scoreless. Meanwhile, for Seattle, 3 errors really costing them in this game, though. Robbie Ray, he was hurt by his own throwing error. He gives up 5 runs, 3 of which were earned in 3 1/3 innings. If you ask me, pitchers that have an error, they should be discredited for those runs. That's a discussion for another podcast on another day, though. Trevor Gott, he got giving up 3 unearned runs in 1 1/3 innings. Ben Murphy out of the bullpen, and then long reliever Chris Flexen comes in and holds down the fort, giving up 1 run in 4 innings. The previous day, my DK Nation pick was on the Seattle Mariners, and they got that one done by a count of 3-0, as it was James Karinchak who gave up a 3-run bomb in the 8th inning. That was the difference, as Ty France took him deep. First home run of the season, though. Cleveland got 6 really good innings out of Shane Bieber, 6 scoreless out of him. Trevor Stephen, a scoreless inning, and Aniel De Los Santos, a pair of outs out of the bullpen. But for Seattle, had to like what you saw out of Luis Castillo. 1 hit, no walks surrendered, and 6 scoreless innings. Matt Brash, Paul Sewald, Andres Munoz all provide a scoreless inning. The Arizona Diamondbacks and the LA Dodgers have started out with a split, as Arizona was able to get the win by a count of 2-1 on Friday, and on Thursday it was the Dodgers who pummeled the Arizona Diamondbacks 8-2. In the 8-2 win, Zach Allen did not look like the stud that many were hoping he would be. 5 runs surrendered in 4 2/3 innings, and then you have Cole Sulzer give up 2 runs in an inning, including home run, as it was the young gun, James Outman, who was able to have home run number 1 of the campaign in that one. From there, you did have a pair of outs out of the bullpen provided by Carlos Vargas, but gives up a run along the way. Kyle Nelson, a scoreless inning. Kevin Ginkel, pair of outs out of the bullpen. And for the LA Dodgers, a rock-solid start from Julio Urias, giving up 2 runs in 6 innings before Shelby Miller, yes, he's still in the league, Yancy Almonte, Phil Bickford, all supply a scoreless inning. And then in the 2-1 win for Arizona, a very strange one, Merrill Kelly goes 3 2/3 innings, walks 4, did not look sharp, but it was Dre Jemison who came out of the bullpen for a super long relief appearance that turned out to be a win, as he gave up a solo run over the course of 4 innings as Mookie Betts took him deep for his first home run of the season. From there, you were able to have Andrew Chafin supply a scoreless 9th inning. Scott McGough was able to give you an out of the bullpen, and it was Kyle Lewis who provided a big hit for Arizona. He got a home run off of Alex Vesia to be able to spring this team, as Dustin May was on his game. 7 scoreless innings. Vesia gives up 2 runs in 2/3 of an inning. Evan Phillips an out of the bullpen, and Caleb Ferguson, he goes for a scoreless inning as well. And then in the 2 games I was able to recap from the podcast yesterday, and the teams that were able to square off on Friday, Houston, they were able to rally to take down the Chicago White Sox 6-3, as the White Sox were up by a count of 3-0 going into the bottom of the 6th inning. But then you had Kyle Tucker happen. He goes deep for his first home run of the season. That comes off of Lance Lynn, who didn't pitch bad, gives up 2 runs in 5 2/3 innings. But Kendall Graveman dug his own grave, as Jimmy Lambert came in for an out of the bullpen, scoreless. But Graveman, he gets 2 outs, but gives up 3 runs along the way. Jake Diekman, he gives up a run while getting just 1 out of the bullpen before you get a scoreless inning out of Jose Ruiz. For the Chicago White Sox, they do go 3 of 9 with men in scoring position, and they were able to get to Christian Javier, giving up 3 runs in 5 innings for Mr. Javier. But this Astros bullpen was one of the best in the big leagues last season, best in the American League in terms of ERA, and Seth Martinez, Brian Abreu, Rafael Montero, Phil Maton, they were able to all supply a scoreless inning to get that one to the window. And then my DK and H-Pick, unfortunately, pitching did its part. The Peterson family did what they needed to. The offense did not. 2-1. The Miami Marlins take down the Mets. I had the Mets money line, and for Peterson, it wasn't the sexiest of performances, as he did allow 8 hits in 5 innings, but gave up just 1 run. That 1 run, it was a solo home run, as Jorge Soler took him deep for his first home run of the season. Jazz Chisholm a little bit later on, he would take John Curtis deep for a home run, as Curtis gives up that solo home run in an inning. He did get 2 scoreless innings out of Tommy Hunter for the New York Mets, and for the Miami Marlins, very good start out of Jesus Luzardo. He gets a win, 5 2/3 innings scoreless. Did walk 4, but allows just 2 hits, as Pete Alonso had the lone run of the game for the Mets. He takes AJ Puck deep for his first home run of the season. Dylan Floro scoreless inning. JT Chargois, he's able to give you 1 1/3 inning scoreless, as the Mets left the bases loaded in the 6th inning. A big reason why they were unable to get the job done there. So a little bit salty about that. And if you're taking a look at the trends of Major League Baseball this far, obviously it's very early. Road teams are 11-9 straight up, but if you're taking a look at the run line, which is laying/shaking a run and a half, home teams and road teams are both 10-10 right now. Underdogs 11-9 on the run line, not really earth-shattering there, and we've had 10 overs and 10 unders, so clearly bookmakers know what the heck they're doing, and if you know baseball, you know that it is very early, but that's what we all saw late Thursday into Friday from Major League Baseball. And coming up next, we're going to be taking a look at some of the teams to watch out for. We're going to be highlighting a lot of the West Coast teams and so much more with Danny Vietti of CBS Sports right here on the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now a part of the VSiN Family Podcast.
Are you ready to become a winning sports bettor? Schedule a call with SBIA to find out how their service can make you a long-term winning player. They've developed an innovative algorithm that maximizes units return, and they are so confident in their system that they offer a money-back guarantee. Sign up by October 31st and get their MBA package at no cost until they reach 10 net units. They treat sports betting like a business. So if you want to learn how to make your sports betting dreams a reality, visit them at SBIA1.com and check them out on social media at SBIA Sports.
breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Visa Family Podcast, and it is great to be joined by our guest as Danny Vietti. He does amazing work over at CBS Sports, taking a look at the great game of baseball. It is back, it is glorious, and this man does a great job of covering it all. He also does a fine job with his podcast, the Wake And Rake Podcast. He does that with World Series champion Will Middlebrooks. They do a tremendous job there, and to be able to follow that podcast, that is at Wake And Rake Pod altogether. And for Danny, his first and last name, Danny Vietti, last name is spelled Vietti, and that is Danny spelled with a Y at the end of it. And Danny, always great to have you aboard. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I know it's baseball season again when I start seeing these names pop back up again, including yours. So I appreciate you having me.
I appreciate it. And you always have to love it when day one of the baseball season's best hit is some guy getting laid out at Dodger Stadium, which that was quite hilarious. That means that baseball is back in our lives. But with that said, we did see average game times be a little bit shorter opening day this year as compared to last year. And how much do you think the rule changes have had an impact on the game? And do you think that's for the better or for the worse?
I think there's going to be an adjustment period, no doubt, as we already saw. I mean, for example, in the Mets-Marlins game, we saw Jeff McNeil called for an automatic strike because his teammate, Pete Alonso, did not get back to first base in quick enough time after a foul ball. And Buck Showalter came out, and it wasn't as much of an argument as it was more of just a clarification of the rule. And so I think we're going to see quirky things that happen that may not be in writing with the rule, such as that example. There's going to be kinks to be worked out. But at the end of the day, the game and the pace yesterday, regardless of what the actual game times were, it was a much more entertaining product. I got done with my work with games ending before 10 o'clock Pacific time. That's new. Probably one of the few times that that's ever happened with me. And so me being over here on the West Coast, I don't mind games ending before 10 o'clock. Maybe I can watch a little Netflix before I hit the sack. So I like it. Everything that I have, all the players that I've talked to, they like it too. And to me, the players are the biggest voice in the room. As long as they approve, I approve.
Yep, I do think that that is very important, and it is a little bit of a new dawn and a new day, but that is the way that all sports are trending as well. It was becoming an issue with games being well over 3 hours. Those Yankees-Red Sox games are still going to be long this year, but perhaps they won't be quite 4 hours. Being able to trim a little bit of time off of that is going to be nice, and Danny, you mentioned it. You are out there on the West Coast, and we've got a lot of intriguing California teams. Obviously, the Padres and the Dodgers in the NL West. The Angels fall to the Oakland A's opening day. Just feels like a different year, but at the same time, the same script with the Angels getting a great performance out of Shohei Ohtani and the bullpen not being able to hold on to a lead. But out of the West Coast teams, which ones are you most curious about? Because I do take a look at the Padres, and I'm just wondering how Fernando Tatis Jr. is going to look once he gets back into lineup, since we haven't seen him in over a year.
Yeah, and the at-bats for him really over his entire career are kind of few and far between. His truly breakout year for Tatis was 2020, when he actually played an entire season. Now, with that said, that 2020 season was only a 60-game condensed season. We have still yet to really see Tatis in a 162, and we probably won't this year considering the suspension. That said, the rest of that Padres squad is loaded. I'm as high on the Padres as I am low on the Dodgers. I'm not trying to say that the Dodgers are going to be under 500, miss the playoffs here. That the Dodgers, they have historically dominated that division and, frankly, the entire National League for the better half of a decade. With that said, they lost their starting shortstop, Trey Turner, starting third baseman, Justin Turner, starting center fielder, Cody Bellinger. And they've also been hit really hard with the injury bug to start this season, too. Their starting shortstop, who was expected to fill the role of Turner, Gavin Lux, he's gone with a torn ACL. Clayton Kershaw dealt with some injuries in spring training. Tony Gonsolin's dealing with injuries. Blake Trinan dealt with injuries. They also lost all-star Tyler Anderson. He went down the I-5 down to the Los Angeles Angels. The Dodgers took a big hit this offseason, not only to the talent, but the leadership, too. JT was the leader of that clubhouse. And what the Padres did this offseason, bringing in some new starting pitching with Lugo and Waka, and then they made it to the National League Championship Series last year without, arguably, their most talented player in Fernando Tatis Jr. To me, the Padres on paper are unarguably the better team in that division, more than the Dodgers, more than the Giants, obviously Diamondbacks and Rockies too. That said, you got to play the games. And the Dodgers have it, like I said, they have a historically winning franchise. They have more of a resume than San Diego does. But talent-wise, San Diego is head and shoulders above.
And it feels like every single year with the Dodgers, there's always a bunch of guys that are off the radar. Like last year, it was someone like a Trace Thompson who they picked up, you thought absolutely nothing about it, and then all of a sudden they break out and they have a massive year. That is just the way that it goes with the LA Dodgers. That's joining me on the podcast. We do have Danny Vietti. And Danny, I'm sure that we have discussed this at least each of the last 3 years. It might be each of the last 4 years, but we've got the LA Angels that coming into the year, their win total right around 81.5 to 82.5. We saw it opening day, Shohei Ohtani, an amazing start, and then the bullpen could not hold up. Do you think that this might finally be the year that the Angels break out? And I'm not even going to ask if they make the playoffs. Do you think that they finish above 500 this year? Because they haven't even been able to do that much in recent years.
Yeah, it's sad that we even have to answer those questions when you consider the talent that they possess. It was a little classic Tungsten Armo Doyle performance from Ohtani. With Ohtani, great performance. Angels bullpen blows it. Yeah, topic and headline is tired at this point. Just keep in mind that it was opening day, first game of the season, and it's a World Series is not won from day one. So with that said, I am a big believer in the Angels this year because I really like their rotation this year, especially compared to previous years. Those top three guys, you have Ohtani as your ace. Then you have Patrick Sandoval, who had a really strong season last year in 2022, continued that success into the World Baseball Classic for Team Mexico. After that, you have Tyler Anderson, who really resurrected his entire career last year with the Dodgers. Those top three guys in the rotation, then you add into the fold a Reed Detmers, who's their former top pitching prospect. Maybe he's able to take a big leap forward, and his velocity is already up this year, at least according to his spring training numbers. The rotation is probably the best it's been in more than half a decade. That's what's really been missing from this team, and the lack of consistency is a lot because of the lack of starting pitching consistency. The offense is going to be there. Rendon's kind of a question mark and kind of an X factor for that team because you know what you're going to get out of Ohtani and Trout and most of the top of that lineup. Can Rendon stay healthy, and can he provide that protection behind Ohtani and Trout? Other than that, I think the rotation's good. I think the bullpen can certainly maybe use a boost at the trade deadline, but can hold up. I really trust this pitching staff, especially compared to previous years.
I do think that the move for Tyler Anderson was good, especially with him staying out there on the West Coast. So I do think that that is going to be a solid fit for them, and it should be interesting to see what we get out of the LA Angels moving forward, because I take a look at some of the beneficiaries/deficitaries of the MLB schedule. I thought that they were relatively a net neutral because they reduce the amount of games that they have to play against the Seattle Mariners and the Houston Astros, which are, in my opinion, head and shoulders the top two teams in that division. But you also lose games against the Oakland A's, which I recognize that they lost on opening day, but at the same time, that's going to be a little bit of a booster. And when you just take a look at the new schedule for this year, because I do think that it is a good thing, what teams do you think could be able to see the biggest boost? Because I take a look at that American League East at the Boston Red Sox and the Baltimore Orioles. They're not having to play the Yankees, the Rays, and the Blue Jays so much. I think it's going to be a nice booster for them and pretty much teams not named the Yankees and the Blue Jays in that division.
Yeah, I mean, if Adley Rutschman decides to go 5 for 5 every game like he did on opening day, you got to like Baltimore's chances for the rest of the year. That said, he's probably going to come back down to earth. He's probably not going to bat 1,000 on the year. But Baltimore certainly has an opportunity to make another leap forward. They kind of surprised everybody last year, being in the playoff race, going over 500. And that's despite having the lowest payroll in all of Major League Baseball this year. I didn't love their offseason. I kind of wanted them to be a little bit more active and kind of go after it more than they did. They basically opted to say, hey, we're going to let our young guys develop and get play time, and whatever success comes our way happens. They have a lot of young talent that's unproven at the same time. You know, we could see Grayson Rodriguez, who's their top pitching prospect, come up at some point this year. But again, he's going to have to develop himself into a pitcher, a big league pitcher, I say. Other teams I kind of have on my radar when it comes to sleeper teams, if you will. Diamondbacks have a lot of really young talent led by Alek Thomas and Corbin Carroll. Miami Marlins, I know it's a very tough division in the National League East, but I really like that rotation. The reigning NL Cy Young with Sandy Alcantara, and then Jesus Luzardo following him. they have a lot of pitching depth in Miami. It's just going to be a really tough division. The National League in total is really tough when you take into account the National League West, National League East. Those are kind of a few teams I have circled on my list. And then obviously the Chicago White Sox have, I think, as much talent as anybody in the American League Central. We'll see if it develops into something more than just what is on paper.
And I do think that AL Central is very intriguing to take a look at, because we came on this podcast a lot last year and we kept talking about, man, this White Sox team is very talented, but they're currently being mismanaged. That was the biggest thing for them last season. And you did see the Minnesota Twins go out. They got Pablo Lopez. He had a very good opening day, and I do think that fortifies them. But I do think that top three of the Twins, the Guardians, along with the Chicago White Sox, that might turn out to be one of the best races in the league this year, because with the Guardians, we were talking about the Miami Marlins having great pitching, but maybe not necessarily a lot of hitting. And I feel like the Guardians are sort of like the American League version of the Marlins, only I think that their pitching might be a little bit of a leg up with that bullpen.
Yeah, I think the Twins and the Blue Jays, I don't want to say won the offseason, because obviously the teams that really made headlines, like the Padres bringing over Bogarts, and obviously Judge re-signed with the Yankees, and they also added Carlos Rodon. The Rangers went and got DeGrom. Maybe not the winner of the offseason, but two teams that had not only an active one, but changed their team and really addressed their needs the best were the Minnesota Twins and Toronto Blue Jays. The Blue Jays last year, they were about middle of the pack when it came to defensive numbers, particularly in the outfield. What did they do to address it? They went out and got Dalton Varsho from Arizona, who led all of Major League Baseball among outfielders in outs above average last year. He also had the second best defensive rating among MLB outfielders. Then they also added Kevin Kiermaier, a former Platinum Glove, Gold Glover. They also added to their pitching staff Chris Bassett. That was really lacking come postseason time. You especially saw it against Seattle. They didn't really have a true third starter when Jose Barrios is not on his game. So now you have a top three trio with Gausman, Manoah, and Bassett, a really nice top three. Then kick it over to Minnesota. What were their needs? Well, they needed to address the starting rotation. They needed more of a starter who could pitch deep into games, 6-7 innings. Well, they went out and traded for Pablo Lopez, who was phenomenal in his first start on opening day. And then they made a bunch of under the radar, but really significant moves with guys like Joey Gallo. They also added Michael Taylor to help defensively in the outfield. I like what the Twins did. We did our American League Central preview last week. I had the Twins winning the division. I really love what they did in the offseason. I really like the talent on that team, especially if guys like Correa and Buxton can't stay healthy.
And they really lucked into Carlos Correa because he just could not pass his physical to save his life in the offseason. So the Twins were able to get him on a very friendly deal. So I do think that they're going to be intriguing to take a look at, as Danny Vietti is joining me on the podcast. And Danny, I mean, it's very early in the season. Regardless of what happens in the first series or two, I don't think that we can draw any sort of conclusions from these teams. But out of the opening day series that we are going to be seeing this weekend, is there maybe one or two that you do have a little bit of a star around? Because you did have some question marks regarding one of, if not both of the teams in that series, and you just want to try to get a little bit of a better gauge of them.
Toronto, St. Louis, and that is not based off of the electric game one. I actually had that circled before game one, and game one on opening day was ridiculous. Back and forth battle. I think it ended with an 11-10 final score. I think St. Louis and Toronto are both capable of winning a title this year. They have that much depth, both Toronto and St. Louis. Pitching on both sides, obviously Toronto has the leg up, especially when you consider St. Louis is dealing with injuries to Adam Wainwright. But both those teams are phenomenal offensively. I think St. Louis has as much offensive depth as anybody. They have guys on their bench this year that are going to be fighting for playing time with like Gorman and the stud Jordan Walker, who's a rookie. They're going to be fighting for playing time, and they would likely be starters on other squads. I think Toronto, St. Louis is really intriguing. I know it's not your blue bloods necessarily or your top two payrolls in baseball necessarily, but I really like those two squads, and I really like the potential that those two have.
I agree with you. Coming into the season, out of all the teams that had a win total out here in Vegas of 90+, the one that I did like the most over was the Toronto Blue Jays. I really think that this team did a good job of revamping that outfield, bringing in Dalton Varsho, bringing in Kevin Kiermaier for some defense. We know that the ballpark dimensions are going to be a little bit different once they start playing in Toronto as well. And for the St. Louis Cardinals, just such a savvy move, bringing in Wilson Contreras to replace Yadier Molina. So from one great catcher to another, and from one great year to another, Danny. You have joined me quite a bit on this podcast. You always deliver tremendous insights. I know that you have spent many months getting set for what we're going to be getting out here in 2023. So let the good people at home know what's on tap for you and how people can follow along on social media and other platforms.
CBSSports.com for everything written. And we just finished our divisional previews on the Wake And Rake podcast when you're not listening to Greg here.
Danny does an absolutely excellent job taking a look at the great game of baseball, and I'm sure that he's going to join me quite a bit throughout the season. He always does, and he always delivers tremendous insights, much like he did today. So big thanks to Danny for joining me right here on the Baseball Betting Show, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. And coming next, it is that time of the podcast. I give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this MLB Saturday as we touch them all.
Breaking down every game, every day in Major League Baseball. This is the Baseball Betting Show. Here is your host, Greg Peterson.
And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for the Baseball Betting Show with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. It is always great to get our good friend Danny Vietti aboard. He does amazing work taking a look at the great game of baseball over at CBS Sports, and as I alluded to a little bit before, the Wake And Rake podcast that he does with Will Middlebrooks, those guys do excellent work there. So a big thanks to Danny for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast to give you picks and analysis on every game on the betting board for this MLB Saturday as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Do note that as per usual, any changes that are made to these plays will be listed up on my Twitter feed at unit_D1. This is going to be going in Las Vegas rotation order, and Las Vegas rotation order is not as bad as most sports because it's going to be going National League games first, then the American League games, Interleague games are going to be at the bottom, and then time order when it comes to the leagues from there. So let's get things started with this first National League game of 9:51, 9:52 on the betting board. It is the Milwaukee Brewers, and they are going to be taking on the Chicago Cubs. Justin Steele is going to be going for the Cubs, and Brandon Woodruff is on the bump for Milwaukee. Currently, most books do not have a total up for this game because with Wrigley Field, they are oftentimes dependent upon the wind, but I'm seeing at DraftKings a total of 7, under as juice of -125, the over is -105. Meanwhile, with the Brewers, they're between a -120 to a -130 favorite, between even money and +115 is your number on the Chicago Cubs. And with the Brewers, I did make them a -132 favorite. I am willing to take them in this spot on the money line, and when it comes to my total, I set it at a 6.4, so even if you get a 6.5, I'm looking at the under, and the big reason why, if you take a look at the wind, it's going to start out being a little bit more directional, but you're going to have 20 plus miles per hour winds, and they're going to be mostly blowing in during this game. That is going to be much to the friend of both of these pitchers. Brandon Woodruff was really amazing after he went on the injured list towards being part of last season. Last season, his first 2 months, he was clearly not himself. He goes on the injured list after having just a cataclysmically bad start to the year, and then down the stretch, this guy was nothing short of dynamic as he was able to post up an ERA that was sub 2.5 after the beginning of the month of July, so I do give him a lot of credit there. Went 13-4, 3.05 ERA, and he has always had his home and road splits as he had a 4.10 road ERA, but much of that came early on during the season, so I do think that he's going to be able to iron that out just a little bit. Gave up about 1.2 home runs per 9 innings last year. For Justin Steele, the big thing for him is command because this guy is nice stuff, right around 9.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. Does a rock solid job of being relatively unhittable, but the big thing for him, the walks. He had 50 walks in 119 innings last year, so that's right around 3.5 walks per 9 innings, so I do think that is a little bit of an issue. Now, he faced off against the Milwaukee Brewers 6 times last season at a 2.03 ERA, so he's able to handle these guys, and the Milwaukee Brewers lineup, let's just call it what it is. It's not necessarily too great. Christian Yelich has completely fallen off the table, and you've got 2 former MVPs that stink in this game. Christian Yelich just has not been able to be himself, and then Cody Bellinger on the flip side for the Chicago Cubs. Both guys had a combined 0 hits in the first game, so whoop-de-stink-and-do there. Jesse Winker, the Brewers are looking to kick the tires on him 2 years ago, was really good with Cincinnati. Last year with the Seattle Mariners, really bad. I think that we're going to get something in the middle with him this year. Rowdy Tellez, he had 35 home runs last year, but hit about a 220, and that's a big thing with the Brewers. You just don't have guys that are able to move the line. You need someone like a Bryce Terang, who's at the bottom of the fold, just to be able to get on base, set the table for these guys. Meanwhile, for the Chicago Cubs, they signed Dansby Swanson. He paid dividends. First game of the season with 3 hits. He's going to be rock solid. Ian Happ does a solid job moving the line. He's got some power, not a tremendous power hitter, but he's a guy that can go off for 25 home runs on a given year like he did in 2021. It's about a 275. They bring in Trey Boo Boo Mancini. He had a little bit of rough COVID in Houston, but by and large has been a solid professional hitter in recent years. So I do think that that's fascinating to take a look at. And both of these bullpens, they do leave something to be desired for the Brewers. Peter Strzelski was able to come on towards the back half of the season. They're looking to Joel Payamps to be able to tie things up. And Payamps is not great. He's not terrible. Last year he had about a 3.23 ERA, but it certainly is not Josh Hader. They've got Devin Williams, but getting to him is going to be a little bit of an adventure. Meanwhile, the Cubs, they get Brad Boxberger and Michael Fulmer in the offseason to be able to tie things up, but the likes of Michael Rucker, Julian Merriweather and company, not necessarily so great. Like I said, I do think that the wind blowing away in this game is going to be the friend of both of these pitchers, and neither of these lineups necessarily impressed me. I did set my total at 6.4. I'm going to be willing to dive under. I just think that Brandon Woodruff is a better pitcher. Second half of last year, he was one of the best pitchers in the big leagues, and I do think that he's going to be able to carry that on. So a circumstance where I'm willing to lay up to a minus 131 with the Brewers, set them at minus 132. It would take a 6 total for me to go over. Set my total at 6.4, so 6.5 or higher. I am going to be taking a look at this total under 953, 954 on the betting board. The Atlanta Braves are on the road facing off against the Washington Nationals. Josiah Gray is going to be going for the Nats. Spencer Strider is on the bump for the Atlanta Braves, and the Braves are massive favorites here, as you're finding them as low as a minus 255, as high as a minus 285, and between plus 215 and seeing as high as a plus 240 right now on the Washington Nationals. Total of 8, over is minus 115, the under is minus 105, and I'm going to be taking a look at this total over. I set it at an 8.3 with Washington Nationals. I don't think they've got the worst lineup in the world. Is it great? No, but Joey Meneses hit right around a 300 last year on limited at-bats. He was able to be rock solid. Lane Thomas came on when he came over to the Washington Nationals, was a hot mess with the St. Louis Cardinals last season, but you know what? When he was able to come over, he had 17 home runs and about 400 bats with Washington, so that was relatively solid. Keeper Ruiz is a guy with some upside as well, so I don't think that the Nationals have the worst lineup in the world, but this Atlanta Braves team, they're at minimum a top 3 lineup in the big leagues. Ronald Acuna Jr. wasn't even necessarily himself last year, and they were rock solid. You've got Orlando Arcia. He does a good job of moving the line. Travis d'Arnaud is a nice power hitter that had 4 hits on opening day. The only thing that has been holding him back in recent years has been injuries. You take a look at the year that Austin Riley had last year. This guy can, on any given year, be able to contend for a triple crown. He had a 275 with 38 home runs last season. He is absolutely amazing. You had Matt Olson have a tremendous spring training. He had a pair of hits opening day, and this Washington Nationals bullpen, it's not the worst in the league. I will give them that. You've got someone like a Carl Edwards Jr., who he's going to probably post up something like a 3 ERA. Hunter Harvey is not great. He's not terrible. Erasmo Ramirez is able to give you multiple innings, but trying to hold up against the Atlanta Braves is relatively rough. For Spencer Strider, he is an incredible up-and-coming pitcher. He won 11-5 last season. The one thing that I do have caution with, and he did address this towards back half of the year last year, it is the walks. He did have a little bit north of 3 walks per 9 innings last season. That is one thing that does seem to spiral on him from time to time, and I do think that the Washington Nationals are going to be able to scratch across a few runs because they are dealing with some injuries when it comes to the bullpen. Tyler Matzek is going to be out for quite some time, so that is not necessarily what you want to see. They did pick up Lucas Luque in the offseason. He's a little bit long in the tooth, though, at age 36. Jesse Chavez, same goes for him as well. You still have AJ Minter. I like what he's able to show, but you got to think that they're going to want to bank some of these relievers for when they have the young gun and Jared Schuster pitching on Sunday as well. So it might be a little bit more of a skeleton crew with regards to the bullpen, trying to save those guys for Sunday. So I do think that there's a little bit of value here on Washington, because with Josiah Gray, I do have to think that he's going to get a little bit less unlucky than he did last year. At home, he had a 6.12 ERA, giving up 19 home runs in 67 and 2/3 innings. Was he great last year? Oh, heck no. Did he deserve that? Oh, heck no as well. He was able to record about 9.3, 9.4 strikeouts per 9 innings. He's got good overall stuff, a nice developing prospect, and a 5.02 ERA last season. And I'm not saying that Josiah Gray is going to become a Cy Young candidate this year, but I think that he's going to figure it out. Certainly, I do think that he's prone to giving up some hard contact, and he's going to do that here against the Braves. So somebody told it at 8.3, seeing the 8, I'm going to be looking at the over, but I was willing to take the Nationals at a plus 205 or greater. Spencer Strider is terrific. He's being priced like he's a top 5 pitcher already, and I'm not quite there on him yet. So I'm going to be willing to take the north of $2 price here on the Washington Nationals. Set my total at 8.3, so also looking at the 8 over. 9.55, 9.56 on the betting board. The New York Metropolitans hit the road face-off against the Miami Marlins. Edward Cabrera is going to be going for the Fish. Tyler McGill is on the bump for the Mets, and the Metropolitans are between minus 117 and minus 125 favorites. Even money to plus 112 is your number on Miami. 7.5 to 8 is your total on the 8. Over and under anywhere between minus 105 and minus 115 on the 7.5. Over is minus 120, and the under, it is even. And I did set my total at a 7.4. So whether you got a 7.5 or an 8, I do like this total under, but I feel like the Miami Marlins actually should be a little bit of a slight favorite in this ordeal. Now, with the Mets, they are going to have the better bullpen in this ordeal, and both teams yesterday were able to get solid starters out of David Peterson, great name, and Jesus Luzardo, respectively. So both of these teams relatively rested with that regard. And for the New York Mets, they were the team with the best batting average on the road last season. Many of those guys are back for blood from last season. You bring back Eduardo Escobar. It was a little bit rough towards the beginning part of the season, but towards back half was able to do some nice things. Starling Marte does a good job moving the line last year. Jeff McNeil, he was able to hit somewhere in the neighborhood of about a 325, so he does a great job of getting on base. Pete Alonso is always one of the best hitters on the road away from home, as he led the big leagues in home runs on the road 2 seasons ago. He had 23 bombs away from home last season, but for Miami, they've really revamped this lineup as well. Garrett Cooper was able to have 3 hits yesterday. Jorge Soler goes off for a home run, and how much of Jorge Soler we're going to get, that is TBD, because he had that big 46 home run season. I believe it was in 2019 with the Kansas City Royals. Ever since then, he hasn't hit 46 home runs since, but he had a bomb yesterday. They bring in Yoli Gurriel. He does a solid job moving the line. Luis Arias, he does a good job of reaching base along with Mean Gene Segura. So this Miami team is certainly a far cry from the bunch that just could not put up runs last season. But for the Miami Marlins, your big fear is this bullpen. You got Joe Floro, JT Chargois. They're not terrible, but they're not great. Uskar Brazobin, they need him to be able to take some strides forward. And for the Mets, I like the fact that they bring in someone like David Robertson. They still got Adam Ottavino, who I feel like he gets a little bit more flack than he deserves. And Brooks Raley was a nice under-the-radar find for them, as he had a 2.68 ERA with the Tampa Bay Rays last season, no doubt. It's hard to replace Edwin Diaz, Seth Lugo, but I think that the Mets did a solid job. But my big issue here is with Tyler McGill, and I just don't think that he matches up very favorably with Edward Cabrera. Edward Cabrera, from watching him, he just has absolutely electrifying stuff, and he's someone that I think is a future ace in this league. Last season, he had a 3.01 ERA, a 6-4 record, sometimes gets a little bit out of control. He gives you north of 3.5 walks per 9 innings, and he had a very striking 4.58 home ERA compared to a $1.49 ERA on the road, giving up 8 home runs and 35 1/3 innings at home. I don't think that that is going to be the case once again, and he was really able to put in some good work in the month of August, was dealing with injuries all season long, so I do think that he's going to be rock solid in this start. Meanwhile, you've got a guy in McGill who he started out the year really strong last year, and then he ended with an ERA north of 5. Just was not able to pitch on the road, 5.84 ERA. Went 3-1 on the road, but it really doesn't speak to how he actually pitched, giving up 5 home runs in 24 2/3 innings. Opponents, they hit him pretty hard, as opponents hit a 253 off of him. His walks per 9 rate was right around about a 2.5, so not great, not terrible, and that's a lot of just what you could expect out of Tyler McGill. Not great, not terrible. Meanwhile, Edward Cabrera, really like his stuff. I do think that both of these young guys are going to be able to do a solid job of pitching in what is a very pitcher-friendly ballpark. We saw that on display yesterday. So I might tell it 7.4, so whether you've got a 7.5 or an 8, I do like this total under, but for the Miami Marlins, I feel like they should be the slight favorite. I really like Edward Cabrera in this ordeal, so going to be taking the Miami Marlins as an underdog on the money line, and I'm going to be taking a look at this total under 957, 958 on the betting board. It is the Pittsburgh Pirates on the road facing off against the Cincinnati Reds. Yes, we are on to Cincinnati, and they're on to Nick Lodolo getting the start, and Rich Hill is going to be going for the Buccos. 8.5 is your total. Over and under, anywhere between minus 105, minus 115. Or the Reds, they're between minus 135 and minus 145 favorites. Between plus 115 and plus 125 is your number on the Pittsburgh Pirates. And with the Buccos, I said them as a plus 166 underdog. I'm going to be willing to lay the Reds on the money line. And if you're taking a look at that Reds run line, you are finding it anywhere between about a plus 143 to a plus 150. So the decision for me is whether to go money line or run line. And I do think that I'm going to be taking that big plus price on the run line of the Cincinnati Reds. I'm going to see how this line progresses in the AM, but especially being able to get a plus 150 on the run line against a guy in Rich Hill that is the oldest starting pitcher in the big leagues He's 43 years old. In baseball years, he's just ancient. He had an ERA of a 4.27 last year. You can't think that he's going to be going much more than 5 innings in any start. His strikeout numbers are way down, and that's what was really able to help him out towards the middle part of his career. He had fewer than 8 strikeouts per 9 innings. Last year, you could tell that towards the back half of the season, he was wearing down, as in each of the last 3 months of the season, since the one straight start that he got in October, he had at least a 4.70 ERA in each of those 3. So, yeah, he is really up there. And I like Nick Lodolo. He looked really good last season. His swing and miss stuff is there at just a 4-7 record, but deserved better than that. 3.66 ERA. He did give up right around 1.2 home runs per 9 innings, but his strikeouts per 9 rate right around 11.5. And you take a look at the way that he was able to end the season, it was relatively remarkable. 10 runs surrendered in his last 5 starts, going at least 5 innings in every one of them, including a nice 8-inning gem against the Milwaukee Brewers. And he's backed up by far the better bullpen, as you've got someone in Fernando Cruz who had barely above a 1 ERA last year. Alexis Diaz, a sub-2 ERA. Joel Kuno was able to come on towards the back half of the season. Derek Law is someone I like, as well as Law last season spent some of the year with the Detroit Tigers. I know that he spent some time with the Minnesota Twins as well. I think that there's a little bit of upside there. And for the Pittsburgh Pirates, we're going to be trotting out the bullpen because David Benhart, he's relatively solid. He's able to be the 9th inning guy. And Chase T. Young, I will give him credit. Sub-3 ERA, he was able to do an okay job. But when you're relying upon guys like a Cullen Holderman to hold it down, even though he's got Holder in his name, it doesn't mean that he's a great reliever. Rob Sanarski, it's just not an ordeal that you want to be in, especially with an aging guy. And for the Pittsburgh Pirates, it's a very feast or famine lineup. Oneil Cruz was able to hit a home run day number 1, but he was sitting right around a 225 last season. Jack Wisniewski had some power numbers last year, 19 home runs in 2022. He also hit a 202 and really doesn't draw a lot of walks. You just don't have a lot of guys other than Brian Reynolds that are able to set the table, as Reynolds, he's really able to do it all for this lineup. 27 home runs, hit right around a 265 last season. I like what he's able to bring to the table, but you bring in someone like a Carlos Santana, he's not able to get on. Andrew McCutchen is about as old as dust at this point. He's just not what he used to be. So I do think that the Cincinnati Reds have a big leg up. Rich Hill, he is clearly on his last leg, figuratively and literally. I actually like the Reds on the run line. I see a nice edge on both. This is one where I say to each their own, whether you go money line or run line, but I'm seeing right now plus 150 on the run line, and you know what? That's calling my name, as I set the run line at a plus 138, so I need at least a plus 140. Set the Reds money line more around a minus 165. So looking at the Reds run line personally here, and with this total, I did set mine at an 8.7. So seeing the 8.5, I'm going to be willing to go over, as it is a very hitter-friendly ballpark out there in Cincinnati, and it's a hitter-friendly pitcher in Rich Hill. So looking at the over and the Reds run line, 959, 960 on the betting board. The Colorado Rockies, they're on the road facing off against the Slam Diego Padres. Michael Wacha, and if he gets lit up, it becomes a dying Pac-Man voice. Waka, 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 is going to be going for the Padres, and Jose Urena is on the bump for the Colorado Rockies. 8.5 is your total. The over is anywhere between minus 105, minus 110. The under is anywhere between minus 110 and minus 115. Padres are between a minus 205 to a minus 220 favorite, between plus 180 and plus 188. Your number on the Rockies. And if you're looking at that Padres run line, currently you're finding them laying a run and a half right around about a minus 110 to a minus 115. And I do want to see this try to get back to about a minus 105, but right now where I'm looking is some sort of a run line on the San Diego Padres to be able to reduce the juice, just because Jose Urena, not necessarily the guy that you want to be trusting in too much. I'm doing this just as run lines have come out, so I do think that we should see some movement. I should be able to get a little bit more of a favorable number. But for Michael Wacha, I take a look at what he was able to do with Boston last year, and he was magnificent. He got injured a little bit throughout the season, so he was only able to provide 23 starts, but an 11-2 record. Fielding independent, it was much higher than the ERA, as he still did give up right around 1.4 home runs per 9 innings, but the walks problem that he had with the Cardinals and other teams, that was gone. He only gave up right around about 2.2, 2.3 walks per 9 innings. Did a good job of limiting hard contact. It felt like it was an all or nothing ordeal with him. He would either give up a home run or he'd give up nothing at all. Meanwhile, for Jose Urena, he had bad results at home. He had bad results on the road. did not look good in spring training. He had a 4.08 ERA when he was away from Coors Field, giving up 4 home runs in 53 innings, but he just doesn't get any swings and misses. His strikeouts per 9 rate was sub 6, and he doesn't even have great command, as he gave up nearly 4 walks per 9 innings, and he's backed up by a bullpen that is without Daniel Bard to begin the season. That's their main closer. Why they've got Dinelson Lamet in the bullpen, I have no idea, but I mean, Jake Bird as well. These are not guys that you want to be trusting in for the San Diego Padres. It's a little bit hot and cold with regards to this bullpen, as Steven Wilson is a little bit mad, but you've got Josh Hader who's able to lock it down in the 9th inning. I like Nabel Christmas. He's able to give you multiple innings. He's able to be relatively sharp. Tim Hill, he's a little bit hot and cold, but you know what? He could be relatively okay for this team, and I do think that the San Diego Padres, they should be able to get a relatively good start in this spot out of Michael Wacha, and it's going to be backed up by one of the best lineups in the big leagues. Xander Bogaerts, night number 1 against the Colorado Rockies. He has 3 hits. They're going to be without Fernando Tatis Jr. for quite some time, but Ha-Seong Kim towards back half of the season was able to pick it up. We got Juan Soto, Manny Machado at the top. Not sure what Nelson Cruz is going to be able to give you at his advanced age, but with the Colorado Rockies, you always do want to note that this team has very demonstrative home and road splits. They average fewer than 3 runs per game on the road last year, while they led the big leagues in runs per game at home last year. Now, CJ Cron, night number 1, a pair of home runs, went 4 of 5. Last year on the road, he had a grand total of 9 home runs and was hitting right around at 220. I don't think that that's necessarily going to be sustainable, as I believe that every single one of the Colorado Rockies, night number 1, had at least 1 hit, so that was very crazy. I do expect a good year from Chris Bryant, Charlie Blackmon, and I do think that for the Rockies, you do want to keep in mind that they haven't played any games at Coors Field, so I do think that the wonkiness that the elevation shifts do cause, that's not going to be there quite yet. So I do give the Rockies a little bit more of a favorable bump this time of year, but I still do think that 8.5 for a game out there at Petco, even with the dimensions being changed in recent years, it is a little bit too lofty. I set my total at 8.1, so I'm going to be looking at the under in this spot. I just have no faith whatsoever in Jose Urena. I'm hoping that we can get more around a minus 110 run line with regards to San Diego Padres, but that's currently where I'm looking, some sort of a bet to be able to reduce the juice on the San Diego Padres and taking a look at the total under as well. 961, 962 on the betting board. It is the Arizona Diamondbacks hitting the road to face off against the LA Dodgers. Clayton Kershaw is going to be going for the Dodgers. Madison Bumgarner is going to be going for the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks are between plus $2 and plus 215. Meanwhile, with the Dodgers are anywhere between minus 230 and minus 260. 8 is your total. The over is anywhere between even money and minus 105. The under, that is between minus 115 and minus 120. Also seeing a 7.5 out there. Over is minus 120. The under is even. Mostly seeing 8s out there, though, and especially with the juice getting down to right around about a minus 115, I am willing to dive under in this ordeal. You do have a Dodgers team that still has a relatively locked down bullpen. The Dodgers did lose quite a few pieces from the offseason, but there are a lot of less than heralded guys that have done a great job with this bullpen, like an Alex Vesia. Really like the way that Evan Phillips was able to pitch for this team last year. Caleb Ferguson, all these guys had sub 3.3 ERAs, part of a Dodgers team that led the league in bullpen ERA last season. I expect a little bit of a bounce back from Phil Bickford this season, and when it comes to having Clayton Kershaw out there, he honestly hasn't bet himself at home in recent years. He typically has been giving up more home runs at home rather than on the road, and as a matter of fact, full season numbers bear that out last year. 239 home ERA compared to 217 road ERA, with his home runs per 9 rate being up about 33% at home, which I find that to be very fascinating. But Clayton Kershaw, even at his advanced age, still better than the way that our good friend Madison Bumgarner has been aging, because that has not been good, to say the least. Madison Bumgarner was one of the biggest fades in all of baseball last season with a 4.88 ERA. This guy has pitched against the LA Dodgers since he was like 15 years old. 5.07 road ERA last season, and in 3 starts against the Dodgers last year, he got tattooed, giving up 4 home runs in 17 innings with a 4.76 ERA. I just can't see a lot of upside here. He just doesn't get strikeouts the way that he once did. His strikeouts per 9 rate is down right around 7. His walks per 9 rate, it's not bad. It's below 3, but he's also not backed up by really any sort of a bullpen. They're kicking the tires on someone like Miguel Castro that might be able to give them a little bit of something, but he still had a 4 ERA last year. Andrew Chafin is getting up there in years. He posted up a sub-3 ERA last year. I've always got my question marks with him, though, and then you've got someone like a Cole Sulser who's just not very good in general. And for the years in the Diamondbacks, this isn't the world's worst lineup. Christian Walker last year had north of 30 home runs, did a good job of being able to move the line. Ketel Marte, I think that he's going to have a nice year. I like the pickup of Lourdes Gurriel last year while he was with the Toronto Blue Jays, was hitting right around a 290, does a good job of reaching base, had 20-plus home runs, 2 out of the previous 3 years prior to last year, so there's a little bit of upside there for the Dodgers. They are without Gavin Lux due to injury. They do lose a few players like Justin Turner during the offseason, but you saw Freddie Freeman, who hit well above a 300 last year. Mookie Betts was hitting north of a 275. He had 35 home runs last season. Max Muncy, I do expect a little bit of a resurgence from him this year after he was horrible last year. They pick up JD Martinez. His power numbers are down, but he's able to reach base, and I really like this young guy in the center field position in James Outman. He had a home run night number 1. He's a good prospect for the team that I think is going to really surprise quite a few people. I do think that the Dodgers have the leg up with regards to the bullpen. I do think that they certainly have the starting pitching advantage, and if you take a look at the run line right now of the Dodgers, that's at minus 110. I am not willing to lay anything more than a minus 110 on the run line of the Dodgers, but I'm willing to lay it. The Dodgers, they won, I believe, all but 15 of their north of 100 games last year by multiple runs. They have been very trustworthy on the run line in recent years. As a matter of fact, if you bet them on the run line rather than the money line, you've been a whole heck of a lot more profitable that way. And with the Diamondbacks, I need a north of a plus 220 to be able to take a shot on them, and currently I am not finding that. So I'm going to be willing to take the Dodgers on the run line at minus 110. So my total is 7.8, so here at 8, looking under to go along with that Dodgers run line. 963, 964 on the betting board. The Houston Astros are going to be playing against the Chicago White Sox. Lucas Giolito is going to be going for the Sox. Jose Urquidy is going to be on the bum for Houston. Houston, anywhere between a minus 130 to a minus 145 favorite, between plus 110 and plus 125, your number on the White Sox. 8 to 8.5 is your total on the 8. Over is between minus 120, minus 125. Under is anywhere between even and plus 105 on the 8.5. Under is anywhere between minus 110 to minus 115. The over is anywhere between minus 105 to a minus 110. And with the Southsiders, I set them as a plus 154 underdog. I'm going to be looking at the Astros. I do think that Lucas Giolito is going to be able to pick it up a little bit from last year. Giolito had a really bad year with a 4.90 ERA, though the 11-9 record wouldn't necessarily indicate that. And for Giolito, the big thing with him has always been command. He always gets out of sorts with regards to the walks. He had right around about 3.4, 3.5 per 9 innings last year, but very strikingly, he did his best work on the road. He had a 6.08 home ERA last year and 3.83 road ERA. It's not great, but it wasn't terrible. He was a little bit unlucky with the home runs they gave up. He was giving up right in the neighborhood of about 1.3, 1.4 home runs per 9 innings, but his strikeouts were still there last season. He just did have a little bit of bad luck on balls in play. Meanwhile, for Jose Urquidy, he's been able to improve with regards to the strikeout stuff, which is very big because he has always been a guy that has been relying upon a little bit more soft contact last year. Now it's not there for him as he gave up 29 home runs of 164 in a third inning, so that's a home runs per 9 rate that is north of 1.5. Actually, it was a little bit worse at home rather than on the road. 3.74 road ERA, 4.17 home ERA. If you take a look at the 2021 campaign, it was a little bit more flipped as he was able to do a much better job at home rather than on the road, so I'm going to be looking for a little bit of a reversal there. But with Jose Urquidy, what he does a nice job of not issuing too many walks. He only gives up about 2.1, 2.2 walks per 9 innings, and he's backed up by a bullpen that was number 1 in the American League in terms of ERA. So many guys, Rafael Montero, Phil Maton, Brian Abreu, Seth Martinez, all these guys had a sub-3.5 ERA. Ryan Stanek last year had a $1.15 ERA. These guys have been absolutely magnificent. And for the Houston Astros, yes, they are dealing with injuries with regards to their starting lineup. Michael Brantley is still out of the fold. You're going to be without Jose Altuve for quite some time, but I do expect a big year from Kyle Tucker. He was really able to bust out last year as we saw him during the World Series have some nice at-bats. He was able to supply 30 home runs and right around about a 330 on base. Yordan Alvarez, aside from home runs, he was right there in every Triple Crown category in the American League, and other than Aaron Judge, he was number 2 in terms of home runs, so we know what to expect there. Jeremy Pena, Alex Bregman, they hit for power, they hit for contact, they do a nice job. Now, I do think a little bit of a key for the team, David Hensley, he looked good in the postseason last year. He's going to be looked to for quite a few at-bats with the injuries here in the early part of the season, and for the Chicago White Sox, this team has the talent to be very good. They pick up Andrew Benintendi in the offseason. He hit above a 300 last year. Tim Anderson is no stranger to hitting a 300 plus. Luis Robert last season was able to do a nice job, hitting about a 285, and that was actually down from his 2021 right around 333 average. It's just a White Sox team that they didn't have anyone really exceed like 20 or so home runs, and they lose Jose Abreu, who was a nice table setter for this team, but guys like Gavin Sheets are able to move the line. Yes, Monty Grandal has a good eye up there at the plate. Elvis Andrus, he's able to move the line as well, but for the White Sox in that bullpen as well, you've got out of the fold currently Liam Hendriks. He's dealing with cancer. You wish him absolutely nothing but the best, but instead they have to venture on without him. Aaron Bummer is relatively okay in the bullpen. Jake Diekman, it's nothing great. It's nothing terrible with him as well. Joe Kelly, you want absolutely no part of. I'm going to call it what it is, and it's going to be interesting to see how Kendall Graveman is able to close out games. Really burst onto the scene with the Seattle Mariners a few seasons ago. He was okay last year, 3.18 ERA, not great, not terrible. So I do take a look at this ordeal, and I do think that Lucas Giolito, he's going to be able to do a relatively okay job, but I think that he's going to make those one or two mistakes, give up a few solo home runs, that is going to allow Houston to be able to get the job done. I did set the Astros as a minus 154 favorite, but I would need like a plus 160 to be able to consider the run line. I'm seeing that at just a plus 140. That is way too short for me, so I'm going to rather lay a little bit more of a chalk here, like minus 130 here with the Astros, just get the job done in a tight game, as I do think that both of these pitchers are going to do a nice job in this ordeal, as the Astros lay north of 60% of their games in the under last year, including their opening day game as well. So set my total at 7.7, looking at the under and looking at the Astros on the money line. 965, 966 on the betting board. The LA Angels hit the road face-off against the Oakland A's, as you've got Patrick Sandoval is going to be going for the Angels, and Shotaro Fujinami is going to be on the bump for the A's. That's a fun name to say, as your total on this game are between 7.5 and 8. On 7.5, overs between minus 115 to minus 120. The unders any between even and minus 105 on the 8. The unders any between minus 110 and minus 115. The over is between minus 105 and minus 110, and it's a circumstance where I did set the Angels at a minus 173 on the money line, and if you're taking a look at the run line, you're getting that right around a minus 105, and I'm not willing to go any further than a minus 105 on the run line. I'm willing to go with the minus 105, though, and you do want to note that with the ballpark out there in Oakland, very pitcher-friendly during the nighttime. The marine layer is out. It really causes balls to just die into oblivion. During the daytime, marine layer is not out. It's a little bit more of a hitter-friendly ballpark, but even with that, I set my total at 7.2. I'm going to be willing to dive under because I really like what I've seen out of Patrick Sandoval. He was able to burst onto the scene at the World Baseball Classic, and you take a look at what he was able to do last year. He deserved a significantly better record than 6-9. He had a 2.91 ERA. His strikeouts per 9 rate a little bit north of 9. Now, he does give up walks, north of 3.5 walks per 9 innings, but he had a 2.54 road ERA. He was able to do a tremendous job towards the back half of the season, as between the months of August and September, he was able to supply a sub-250 ERA. I do think that he's going to be able to do a nice job when it came to his starts against the Oakland A's. He had a .180 ERA across 25 innings, so he knows how to handle these guys. Now, the Oakland A's have been able to revamp their lineup just a little bit, as they've got Ramon Laureano actually healthy this year, so that is going to be able to help them out. The lone guy that returns from last year that really gave you production is Seth Brown. He had 25 home runs at about a 230 batting average. They pick up Jesus Aguilar. He's someone that has a nice power bat. Actually was leading the National League in RBI in like August of 2021, so he's not far removed from production. You're going to be needing more production out of someone like Shea Langolaris, but there's upside there. It's called what it is, one of the worst lineups in the big leagues, if not the worst lineup in the big leagues. And then with the LA Angels, you've got a lot of guys there, if they're able to put it together, they could be very dangerous. Taylor Ward last year hit about a 280 or so, and he was able to supply 23 home runs, but was very hot and cold throughout the season. They pick up Gio Urshela, does a nice job of moving the line. Hunter Renfroe had a nice season last year with the Milwaukee Brewers, slugging out 29 home runs, hitting about a 255. We all know what Shohei Ohtani and Mike Trout are able to bring to the table, top 5 hitters in this league in this day and age. But the big fear that you've got with the Angels, this bullpen, it's not very good. Jimmy Herget is someone that they might be able to build around moving forward. He had about a 250 ERA last season. He was not the guy that blew it for them on opening day. It was their other schlubs that are currently in the bullpen. Aaron Loop, he was not good last year. I don't think that he's going to be very good this year. Why they're signing Carlos Estevez, I have absolutely no idea. A guy with a career 4.59 ERA. Granted, that was with the Colorado Rockies, but I don't have a lot of faith in him. Matt Moore had a nice year last year. I don't know if he's going to be able to continue off of that. And I do think that the A's, honestly, if they've got an advantage in this game, it's in the bullpen, as long as they don't use Jurcic Familia, which is Spanish for blowing saves. save. He is absolutely terrible, but Danny Jimenez is someone that you're able to rely upon. Domingo Acevedo last year was able to be pretty rock solid as he provided about a 3.33 ERA. I like what he's able to do. They signed Trevor May, not so great, but Sam Mull was able to do a solid job for the team last year. So I actually do like the Oakland A's bullpen, and when it comes to Fujinami, he comes over from the country of Japan. This is a little bit of an unknown from him. From everything that I saw from him in spring training, wasn't terrific, wasn't terrible. He's able to get you a few strikeouts. I believe that he was pitching for the Hanshin Tigers, and when he was pitching for Hanshin last year, and he wasn't like some lightning rod out there in Japan, which is why they only got him for about $3.5 million. But at the same time, he's able to do a solid job with regards to his command. He should be able to give you 5 solid innings, and pitching in a ballpark like Oakland, where fly balls that might go out in other ballparks are going to be held by this one, I think is going to really be able to help him out. So I take a look at this spot, and with the Angels, I'm willing to lay the minus 105 on the run line and absolutely nothing more. And I did set my total at a 7.2. So looking under and looking at that Angels run line, 967, 968 on the betting board. The Detroit Tigers, they are on the road facing off against the Tampa Bay Rays as Zach Eflin hopes to not be Eflin awful for the Tampa Bay Rays, and Spencer Turnbull, he's back. He is going for Detroit, and your total on this game is anywhere between 7.5 and 8. On the 7.5, over is minus 120. The under is even. On the 8, the under is minus 115, and the over is minus 105, seeing minus 110 on that over and under of 8 as well. While the Rays, they are between minus 175 and minus 190, and between plus 150 and plus 160. Your number on Detroit, also seeing a run line price on the Tampa Bay Rays, laying a run and a half at a plus 125, and that is just not enough for me in this ordeal, as I did set the Rays at a minus 167, but I needed at least a plus 140 to be able to take a shot on the run line. And when it comes to the Detroit Tigers, I'm seeing some minus 140s on the run line. I want to see this come down a little bit more, and I do think that it's going to come down a little bit more, but even at right around about a minus 140 or so, I would be looking to take a run and a half with the Detroit Tigers, and or if I can get this closer to about a plus 165, plus 170 on the money line, which once again, I don't think money is going to be coming in on the Detroit Tigers. I'm going to be looking there. Late night line movement is going to determine whether it's going to be a Tigers money line or run line play, but I am looking at the Tigers in some form or capacity. Spencer Turnbull missed the entirety of the season last year due to injury, so you have to go all the way back to 2021, but he looked relatively rock solid in spring training. It took him a start or two to be able to get lathered up and to be able to get ready to go, but I do like the overall upside that you do have with Spencer Turnbull, and the big reason why I do like what Spencer Turnbull is able to do is that he was really reducing his walks when he went out with injury during the 2021 season. He's got some good plus stuff. He's been able to add a little bit to that fastball. It's going to be interesting to see if he's able to maintain that increased velocity that we were seeing prior to his injury, but he was really starting to put it together as a pitcher, did a nice job of being able to keep the ball in the yard, and now he goes up against a guy in Zach Eflin, which you don't know whether you're going to get Zach Eflin good or Zach Eflin awful, because this guy is all over the place. You take a look at his numbers last year, he had a .173 ERA when he pitched in Philadelphia last year, 6.88 ERA everywhere else. That is not the split that you want to be taking a look at. Now, Tampa Bay, as we know, a little bit more of a pitcher-friendly ballpark, so that's going to be able to help him out, but it just feels like he'll be rolling for 4 innings, and then all of a sudden everything comes to a screeching halt. And you've got a Tampa Bay Rays team that they've got a very good bullpen. Pete Fairbanks hardly pitched last season, but when he was out there, he was able to do a very nice job for the team, a very good lockdown closer along with JP Fireeisen, which unfortunately he is not going to be in the fold for this team. But you've got Jason Adam, who's able to do a solid job. Jalen Beeks is able to give you nice innings along Cullen Pooch. And for the Detroit Tigers, this bullpen was actually pretty good last year, but you've got sort of the remains of that, like Michael Fulmer is out of the fold. I think that they had Andrew Chafin last year, and he is no longer with the team, but you still have someone like an Alex Lang. They move on from Gregory Soto as well, but Jason Shreve, I think, is going to be able to lend a few solid innings. A little bit long in the tooth is Mr. Shreve, but last year with the New York Yankees, really bad year 2 seasons ago when he was with the Pittsburgh Pirates, was able to have a career renaissance. I think that he's going to be somewhere in the middle of both A and B. And for the Detroit Tigers, just all about being able to generate a little bit of offense. They scored as many runs as myself on opening day, and I do think that they're going to be a little bit better this year. Austin Meadows, who they actually got from the Tampa Bay Rays, he was just a hot mess last season and couldn't stay out there on the field, but you go back to what he did 2 seasons ago with the Rays, he had 27 home runs, so he's able to be a nice power bat for the team. Spencer Torkelson has not been able to figure it out at the major league level yet, but Riley Green is able to move the line. Miguel Cabrera does a good job of giving you singles. His power number are gone, but at the same time, I do think that he can provide something. Matt Vierling, who comes in from Philadelphia, I think that he can be relatively okay. Still a bottom 5 lineup in the big leagues. Meanwhile, for the Tampa Bay Rays, Wander Franco is a up-and-coming star for the team along with Randy Arozarena. These guys are able to move the line. These guys are able to provide quite a bit of power as well. Jose Siri went deep opening day. Isaac Paredes, he's an interesting character in that he was one of the top home run hitters for the Tampa Bay Rays last year with 20 home runs. Hit just a 205 though. He was a little bit of an outcast with the Tigers, but you've got Yandy Diaz, who does a good job of being able to hit nearly a 300 here. Ramirez does a good job of being able to get on base. With the Rays, you do have your question marks with this offense. There's no question marks with regards to the pitching though. It's just whether or not you're able to get like 4 or 5 innings out of Zach Eflin, and I do think that the Tigers are going to be able to hang in there, and what I think is going to be a defensive struggle, because I just don't have any faith in either of these offenses putting up any sort of scoring, even though there are question marks with both of these starters. I set my total at 7.3, so whether you've got a 7.5 or an 8, I'm looking at the under, and as I mentioned with the Detroit Tigers, all about late night line movement as to whether or not I'm going to be taking a look at the money line or the run line. 960, 970. On the betting board, it is the Kansas City Royals. They play us the Minnesota Twins. Sonny Gray is going to be going for the Twins, and Jordan Lyles is on the bump for the Royals, and the Royals are between plus 135 and plus 148 underdogs. Meanwhile, if you're taking a look at Minnesota, you're going to be getting them between minus 157 and minus 165. Total on this game is 8.5, and the juice is all over the place. The over and the under are anywhere between even money and minus 120. So do shop around there, and I did set my total for this game at an 8.3. So you're at the 8.5, especially with most books offering the under at even money. I am going to be taking a look at this total under, but when it comes to Minnesota Twins, I set them as a minus 147 favorite, so I need at least a plus 147, but the plus 148 that I'm seeing, it is calling my name. I'm going to be taking a look at the plus number here of the Kansas City Royals. With the Royals, I do think that they're going to get an okay performance. Jordan Lyles. Now, the one thing that has me a little bit cold on Jordan Lyles is that his home run numbers were so different home to road last year. He was pitching for the Orioles last year. They really mixed up their ballpark dimensions, and as a result, he gave up 6 home runs in 83 innings at home. On the road, he gave up 20 bombs in 96 innings. So that is a little bit of an issue going up against a Minnesota Twins team that they don't necessarily have a ton of power, but what they do have is a lot of guys that are able to move the line. Byron Buxton is finally healthy, and whenever Byron Buxton's fully healthy, this guy has the potential to be an MVP candidate, as he had 28 home runs in 340 at-bats last season. That was relatively terrific. He just couldn't move the line. Carlos Correa, he's back after just a adventurous offseason, to say the least. You've got someone like a Trevor Larnach, who last season he provided about a 235 or so average. You need to get a little bit more out of him, and I do think that you are going to be able to get that, but you also saw Jose Miranda last season be able to supply the team with about 15 home runs. He had about a 270, so the Twins, not necessarily a ton of power, but someone like Donovan Solano does a good job of being able to move the line. Meanwhile, for the Kansas City Royals, they've now named Salvador Perez an MVP, and if he can get back to the form that he had 2 years ago, look out below, because he had a really slow start to the year last year. I think a lot of it was due to injury, and then towards the back half of the season, he was terrific, but in 2021, he was able to slug out 48 home runs. He had a 275. I think that he's going to be somewhere between what he was towards the beginning part of last year and then that great form of 2 years ago, but Vinny Pasquantino, he was able to emerge towards the back half of last season. He was hitting north of a 275. Michael Massey last year, he moved the line, hitting about a 245, so there's lots of upside with guys like this. Bobby Witt, MJ Melendez, who has a little bit of power, and for the Kansas City Royals, it's all about figuring out the bullpen, but they had a lot of guys be injured in that bullpen last season. Now you've got these guys fully healthy. I like Scott Barlow as a closer. He's able to give you a sub-225 ERA. They pick up Aroldis Chapman, which at this point of his career, he's not what he once was, but he's still better than some of the jabronis that he had last season, so that's good. They moved Carlos Hernandez to the bullpen, which I think is a good move for the team as well. And for the Minnesota Twins, they do have a bullpen that I actually really like. Griffin Jax has turned into a nice bullpen piece for the team. Jorge Alcala is able to hold it down. Yohan Duran, I think he's got a potential to be a top 5 closer. He throws north of 100 miles per hour. Giovanni Morin had a nice ERA last year. Really, other than Emilio Pagan, which I don't know why he's employed by the Minnesota Twins, this team is relatively solid. And then for Sonny Gray, he was able to have himself a solid year last year, but you just can never get into rhythm with him because after like 3 starts, he gets injured every single time. And he wasn't necessarily the same pitcher on the road as he was at home. 266 home ERA, 363 ERA on the road. Doesn't give up a bunch of bombs, about 0.9 home runs per 9 innings, a little bit under 3 walks per 9 innings, 9 strikeouts per 9 innings. He doesn't do one thing great, but he's relatively solid, but it always feels like for some reason he's always a little bit banged up, and you just never know when that injury is going to happen mid-game. So there's a little bit of trepidation there. I do think that Jordan Lyles is going to be able to do an okay job in this spot going up against a Minnesota Twins team that doesn't necessarily have a ton of power, which is why I did set my total at 8.3, so here at 8.5, I'm going to be willing to go under, and like I said, that 148 that I'm seeing, we'll take the plus price to go along with this total under 971, 972 on the betting board. It is the Baltimore Orioles, and they hit the road face-off against the Boston Red Sox. Chris Sale is going to be going for the Sox. Dean Kramer is on the bump for Baltimore, and Baltimore are anywhere between a plus 135 to a plus 148 underdog. Meanwhile, with the Sox, you're getting them anywhere between minus 155 and minus 165. 9 is the total. Over and under are both at minus 110, and I did set my total at 8.4. I'm going to be willing to dive under in this ordeal with Chris Sale. He looked relatively solid in the spring training appearances that he was able to make, but you do take a look at what is supporting him, and that's not necessarily too terrific, and I do fully expect the Boston Red Sox to be playing it very safe. I do think that he's going to be on a relatively tight pitch count because they are going to be needing him to be able to deliver when it really counts, and let's call it what it is. This is a big game for his first start of the season, but at the same time, they aren't going to risk it. And then he goes up against a guy in Kramer that I felt like he was really lucky last year. Not necessarily a high strikeout guy. His strikeouts per 9 rate was right around 6. Doesn't walk a lot of guys, about 2.7 walks per 9 innings, but his home runs per 9 rate, and I was hovering in the neighborhood about 0.8. He had a 3.63 road ERA with 7 home runs, give it up in 62 innings, while giving up about a 4.25 ERA to Boston. And I do think that the Red Sox actually match up quite well with them. I think that this is a little bit of a rough ballpark for a righty like Kramer to be pitching in. And you take a look at this Boston Red Sox lineup, and they lost on opening day, but they were able to put up 9 runs. They lose JD Martinez, but Alex Verdugo, Justin Turner, Rafael Devers, they all had multiple hits in that first game, including the highly touted gentleman that comes in from Japan, Masataka Yoshida. I love what these guys are able to bring to the table. You might not get like 30 plus home runs out of anyone other than really Devers, but they do a good job of just being able to move the line, get on base. They're kicking the tires on Adam Duvall, who a few years ago had a pretty massive year when he was able to bust out, had some big home run years when it came to the Cincinnati Reds. Has never really been a batting average guy, but in this ballpark, I think that he's going to be able to crush quite a few home runs. You do have question marks at the bottom of the fold. What are you going to be able to get out of guys like Reese McGuire? Kike Hernandez was not himself last year, but by and large, I do like the lineup. And for Baltimore, you had Adley Rutschman go off for 5 hits in the team's opening day game, and when he got called up to the big leagues, the Baltimore Orioles were quite a few games below 500 last year. I think they were either 12 or 13 games above 500 in games that Adley Rutschman played in, so that is absolutely massive. Anthony Santander has been terrorizing the Boston Red Sox in recent years. I really love what he's able to do, as he last year had 33 home runs, right around a 320 on base, and then you've got some speedsters, and I think that that's going to be big because Jorge Mateo was one of the best base stealers last season with the increased bases, with the new rule changes in general, with being able to check guys. I think that that's going to help him out. Gunnar Henderson, consensus leader for Rookie of the Year on the odds board. You've got Cedric Mullins, who was a Silver Slugger a few seasons ago. I believe that he was up for the batting crown as well. So you've got a lot of guys for Baltimore. They're able to do a nice job. But I do think that the bullpen is going to be better than what it showed out to be in day number 1. Felix Bautista had a sub-2 ERA last season. They pick up Danny Columbi, who I think he's going to be able to have himself a very nice year. Last 2 seasons, a combined sub-3 ERA, so there's upside there. They do lose a few guys like a Jorge Lopez from last year, but Cionel Perez is still in the fold. And for the Boston Red Sox, the big key is, what are you going to be able to get out of this bullpen? Because Chris Sale has a big giant advantage over Dean Kramer, in my opinion. I think that Kramer is in for aggression, but now kicking the tires on someone like a Richard Blyer, who had like a 3.55 ERA last year, they pick up Kenley Jansen, and he's going to be a guy that is going to be affected by the pitch clock, that is for sure. Zach Kelly, he had a terrible ERA last year. Caleb Ort had an 8 ERA last year. John Schreiber is someone I like, and they've been apparently trying Josh Winkowski out of the bullpen as well. So Red Sox have a lot of question marks with the bullpen. They don't really have question marks with regards to the lineup, and I do think that Chris Sale going to be able to deliver just enough for the Boston Red Sox to get it done in what I think is a mid-scoring game. If you're looking at the Red Sox run line, you're finding that only between about a plus 115 to a plus 120. Meanwhile, if you're looking at the Orioles run line, you have to lay about a minus 135-ish at most books to be able to get a run and a half. Honestly, that's where I'm looking. I set the Red Sox as more about a minus 175-ish favorite. I don't want to lay a minus 155 to a minus 160 here when I could get the Baltimore Orioles getting a run and a half. They were the best run line team in baseball. I recognize I'm still laying some juice, but at the same time, with not knowing how deep Chris Sale is going to be going in this game and not knowing what in the world we're going to get out of a Red Sox bullpen that I think is going to be terrible this year, I'm actually going to take a run and a half with the Baltimore Orioles because I do think that Kramer, he is doing for a little bit of regression, but I think that he's able to provide just enough length for the Orioles bullpen to be able to keep this within a run. So if I total 8.4, I'm going to be diving under. And with the Orioles, I'm taking a run and a half, laying about minus 135 here on that play. 973, 974 on the betting board. The Seattle Mariners, they play us the Cleveland Guardians. Aaron Savali is going to be going for Cleveland, and Logan Gilbert is on the bump for Seattle. Seattle's between a minus 135 to a minus 145 favorite. And between plus 115 and plus 125, your number on Cleveland. 7.5 is the total. Unders between minus 115 and minus 120. The overs anywhere between minus 105 and even money. So I total at 6.9. I'm going to be willing to dive under. You saw the Cleveland Guardians score as many runs as myself on opening day, and I don't think they get completely shut out in this affair, but I do think that both of these pitchers are going to be on point. With Aaron Savali, it's been very interesting because in like every year of his career, his fielding independent is either like a full run above or a full run below what it actually should be in terms of the ERA. He's either getting super lucky or he's getting super unlucky. He has never been able to find that watermark, and last year had a 4.92 ERA. I think he should probably be about a 4-ish ERA guy. He gives up about 1.3 home runs per 9 innings, but has good command, only giving up about 2 walks per 9 innings. Not an electrifying strikeout guy, but he was better with the strikeout stuff last season. Meanwhile, I take a look at Logan Gilbert, and I like this guy. He probably is a candidate for a little bit of regression as well. He had about 8.2 strikeouts per 9 innings, gave up about a home run per 9 innings last season, but he's got relatively good command, so I like what he's able to bring to the table. And goes up against Guardians team that was second lowest in the big leagues last year in terms of home runs per game. They do pick up Josh Bell. I think that that's going to be a nice addition for him, but what you're really building off of is guys like Andres Jimenez, Steven Kwan, Ahmed Rosario, Jose Ramirez, all guys that were able to hit at least a 275 for this bunch. Will Brandon is someone that I think has an upside, as he didn't get a lot of at-bats last season, but when he did get at-bats, he moved the line. Now you do have dead bats and Mike Zunino, Miles Straw at the bottom of the fold, but I do like this Guardian team overall. The problem is, really, your main power hitter is Jose Ramirez with 29 home runs last year. You're relying upon Josh Naylor and Josh Bell to be able to provide a little bit more. Meanwhile, Ty France, it's not a tie, it's a win whenever you've got France up there at the plate. He had that big home run that lifted the team to victory on opening day, and I really like the way that he just has his plate approach just nailed down. As last year, he had about a 275. He was able to slug 20 home runs, did flail towards the back half of last season, but you've got good power with the team. Cal Raleigh, big dumper. He could give you 30-plus home runs this year. They bring in Teoscar Hernandez. He had a combined 57 home runs at a 279 batting average the last 2 seasons in Toronto. Colton Wong is able to move the line, and that's a big thing for the Mariners. They were third lowest in batting average last season across the league. Being able to bring in those guys, I think, is very beneficial, and both of these teams are tremendous with their bullpen. James Karinchak, along with Aniel De Los Santos, are solid for the Guardians. Eli Morgan as well. So I do think that they're going to be able to do a rock-solid job there. But for the Seattle Mariners, when they move Matt Brash to the bullpen, that was big for them. Andres Munoz has nasty stuff. Penn Murphy had a sub-3 ERA last season. They've got all sorts of depth. Both of these teams do with regards to their bullpen. I just think that Logan Gilbert is a bit better in this spot. You know what to get out of him a little bit more. And I did set my money line price at a minus 143, so getting a minus 135, I'm willing to entertain that. If you really feel frisky, you can get a plus 170 run line of the Seattle Mariners. I would honestly need about a plus 175 to even consider it. I'm just going to play it safe here. It's a little bit chalky, but going to go with the money line of the Seattle Mariners and what I think is going to be a low-scoring game, set by total 6.9. So diving under and going with Seattle. 975, 976 on the betting board. The Toronto Blue Jays are on the road facing off against the St. Louis Cardinals. Captain Jack Flaherty is going to be going for the Cards, and Kevin Gausman is on the bump for Toronto. Toronto's between a minus 120 to a minus 130 favorite. Between plus 110 and plus plus 115. Your number on the Cardinals, your total is 8 over and under, anywhere between minus 105 and minus 115. And I did set my total at 7.7. Both of these offenses are relatively high powered, but I do think that Kevin Gausman is in for a big year this year. I'm going to be diving under. And with the Blue Jays, I did set them as a minus 134 favorite. I'm going to be going with the money line, the run line price. They're able to get about a plus 140 to a plus 145, which I see a little bit of an edge both on the money line and the run line, but in this circumstance, especially with it early in the year, I'm going to play it safe, and I am just going to play the money line in this ordeal. With Kevin Gausman, he had the league's best fielding independent among qualifying starters last year and did get a little bit unlucky. You take a look at his numbers, he was able to register a 12-10 record with a 3.35 ERA, but his fielding independent was a 2.38, gave up 0.8 home runs at 1.4 walks per 9 innings while getting 10.5 strikeouts per 9 innings. Now, sometimes he does find a little bit too much of the middle of the plate, and that's an issue when you go up against a duo in Nolan Arenado and Paul Goldschmidt that had a combined north of 60 home runs between the two of them. Both of these guys combined it north of a 300 last year. They were absolutely terrific, and I think there's a lot of upside with this young outfield as you got Jordan Walker, Tyler O'Neill. I expect big years out of both of those young guys. Lars Nootbaar, great name. I like what he's able to bring to the table. Wilson Contreras, very good replacement for Yadier Molina, but I honestly think that the Blue Jays just provide a little bit of a better lineup too, as Flagler Jr., the year that Shohei Ohtani won the MVP 2 seasons ago, I mean, he had darn near 50 home runs that season and was sitting right around 300. This guy is absolutely amazing. They bring in Brandon Belt in the offseason. You heard Steve Gardner of USA Today talk him up yesterday, and I do think that he's going to be able to have a nice resurgence as well. Needs to stay healthy, has been banged up each of the last 3 seasons, but whenever he's out there, he's able to be relatively solid. At 29 home runs in 97 games 2 seasons ago with the San Francisco Giants, so that's big. George Springer had 5 hits opening day. Bo Bichette, he does a good job moving the line. Both of these guys have relatively solid power. Now they're able to help out their pitcher as well with Dalton Varsho, Kevin Kiermaier being in that outfield as well, and Varsho's able to hit as well. And for the Blue Jays, under the radar, this is actually a bullpen that I like. Adam Simber, Yimi Garcia are relatively solid guys. Anthony Bass, is he overwhelming? No, but at the same time, he's a solid depth piece for the bullpen. Eric Swanson was able to supply a sub-2 ERA while he was with the Seattle Mariners last year. Meanwhile, the St. Louis Cardinals, Ryan Helsley has not looked like himself since the back half of last season. I think that he's going to be able to pick it up. Giovanni Gallegos is relatively solid, but Andre Palante, Packy Naughton, they're not guys I necessarily want to hitch my wagon to. I actually do like Zach Thompson. I do think that he's got quite a bit of upside. And for Jack Flaherty, he looked relatively good when it came to spring training, but this guy just has not been able to stay out there on the field consistently. This is a gentleman in Mr. Flaherty who's made 35 total pitching appearances over the last 3 years. That's a big giant issue, and when we saw him out there last year, it was stop, start, 4.25 ERA. I think that his stuff is getting back to where it was when he was very dominant towards the back half of the 2019 season, but I don't think that he's fully there. I give the pitching advantage to Kevin Gausman and company. I think the Blue Jays have a little bit of a better lineup and a better bullpen. I set my total at 7.7. Pitcher-friendly ballpark out there in Seattle, very early April. Ball's not going to be flying too much, so looking at the under, and I'm willing to take the Blue Jays on the money line, 977, 978. This is going to be the DK Nation pick. You got the Philadelphia Phillies on the road facing off against the Walker Texas Rangers. Nathan Eovaldi is going to be going for the Rangers. Zach Whelan and Dylan Wheeler goes for the Phils. 7.5 is the total, over and under, anywhere between minus 105 to a minus 115. And with the Phillies, are between minus 125 to minus 130 favorites, anywhere between plus 110 and plus 117 is your number on the Rangers. I did set the Phillies at a minus 121. We are currently seeing them mostly between minus 125 to a minus 130, so want to see them either get down to a minus 120, or if we're able to get to a plus 120, that'll be my buy point on the Texas Rangers. I'm sort of in that awkward holding stage, and if you're taking a look at the run line in this ordeal, you are able to get the Philadelphia Phillies right around about a plus 135 to a plus 140. If I'd be able to get a plus 145 there, I'd be willing to take a shot. So this is very much wait and see mode. I do think that when it's all said and done, I probably will be on the Philadelphia Phillies. I think that this number gets down to a minus 120, but this is a little bit of wait and see mode once the juice does get reduced a little bit more, and more places that have a dime line have something available for me. But my right up here is going to be on the over. So my total at 8.3. So even if this goes up to 8, I do like this total over, just because you've got a very notoriously slow starter in Zach Wheeler. In his 4 starts that he made in the month of April last year, 5.79 ERA, and for his career, he's got a 4.40 ERA in the months of March and April. Every single other month in the calendar, he has a 3.81 ERA or lower, and that does speak to me a little bit. I do take a look at those sorts sorts of things. And Nathan Eovaldi, for as good as he was a few seasons ago, this guy gives up rockets. He's had a home runs per 9 rate of a 1.5 or greater in 3 of the last 4 years since the beginning of the 2014 season. Opponents overall are hitting a 263 off of him, and the ballpark in Arlington, I'm not going to say that it's pitcher unfriendly, but at the same time, it's not pitcher friendly. So that is a little bit of an issue that you do have to deal with Nathan Eovaldi. Now, he doesn't walk anyone. Fewer than 2 walks per 9 innings in each of the last 3 seasons. And for Zach Wheeler, 2.82 ERA, 12-7 record. When he shakes off the cobwebs, he's always very good. But also with Zach Wheeler, very demonstrative home and road splits last year. .85 home ERA, 3.84 road ERA. As opponents hit a 2.53 off of him when he was away from home. Home runs per 9 rate was still solid, about 1 home run per 9 innings. But both of these teams ranked in the top 8 in terms of home runs per game last season, and I really think that you've got a good lineup here with the Texas Rangers. Marcus Semien, he just took a while to get going last year, and when he did get going, he was able to fire on all cylinders. You saw opening day a home run for Brad Miller. I do think that even though he's a little bit long in the tooth, he can give the team some solid at-bats. Corey Seager, I think he's being back to his normal self. He had 33 home runs. He was able to hit about a 245 last season. I think that that's going to be a little bit better this year. Adolis Garcia, he was hot and cold last year, but still had 25 plus home runs. So does a good job of moving the line. And the Philadelphia Phillies, they were a top 8 team in terms of runs per game last year as well. You've got JT Realmuto, Nick Castellanos. These guys are absolutely amazing. They are going to be without Bryce Harper for a while, but you're bringing Trey Turner. He does so many things well with the changes in the rules for pickoffs and for the bases. I think that that's going to help him out as he does a good job of being able to generate swipes. Kyle Schwarber had 45 plus home runs last season as well. So you've got a lot of power hitters that are tremendous, and both of these teams suspect with their bullpens. Texas Rangers 17th in the league in bullpen ERA last season. They didn't add a lot to that. The Phillies are currently 24th in the league in bullpen ERA, and they bring in Craig Kimbrell. That's not helping at all. You've also got someone like an Andrew Velasquez who you're having to rely upon. It sounds like they might have to start Matt Stram for a few days. Sir Anthony Dominguez, he's relatively solid. Connor Brogdon is not bad as well, but this is a highly suspect bullpen. Jose Alvarado was able to pick it up towards the back half of the season, but he was terrible towards the first half of the year. What are we going to be able to see out of him? And then for the Texas Rangers as well, you've got a bunch of guys like an Jose Leclerc that was okay last year, but Matt Moore was actually really good for them. They lost him during the offseason. Taylor Hearn is probably a guy that you're looking at as more of your long man. The pitching rotation itself is solid, but other than Brock Burke, you really don't have too many trustworthy guys in this bullpen. So I do think that both of these guys are going to give up plenty of contact. So my write-up here, it is on the over. I set my total at 8.3, and when it comes to Rangers, if I'm able to get north of plus 120, I'm going to be willing to fire in on them. Started thinking I'm going to get that minus 120 on the Philadelphia Phillies, but I'm in wait-and-see mode with regards to the money line of the Phillies / the Rangers, because that 120 mark is really what I'm looking for on either side. But my write-up here, that is on the over, and we were at things up with 979, 980 on the betting board. The New York Yankees, they play host the San Francisco Giants. Alex Cobb is going to be going for the Giants, and Clark Schmidt is on the bump for the New York Yankees. The Yankees are a minus 130 to a minus 135 favorite. Meanwhile, if you're taking a look at the San Francisco Giants, they are anywhere between a plus 115 to a plus 125 underdog. Total on this game is 8.5. Under is anywhere between minus 110 and minus 120. The over is anywhere between even and minus 110. And for the Yankees, I did set them at a minus 146, so here at right around minus 135. I'm seeing as good as a minus 130. I'm willing to back them with Clark Schmidt. Doesn't have a lot of experience in a starter's role, but has a lot of experience going 3+ innings in a Major League Baseball game. I don't think that we're going to be seeing him go like 100 pitches or anything like that, mostly because not a lot of guys are going that deep into a game, but Alex Cobb is just a guy that I don't trust on the road, and he was a big-time victim of some bad luck. You take a look at what happened with him last year, and he had a fielding independent that was more than a point lower than his ERA throughout much of the season before things ironed out towards the back half of the campaign. As you take a look at him on the road, 5.20 ERA, gave up 5 home runs in 62 1/3 innings. His walks per 9 rate on the road was right around 2.5, but opponents hit a 303 off of him. They didn't even necessarily get the world's greatest contact. They just found all the wrong holes. So I do think that Alex Cobb is better than his numbers would indicate, but I actually do like this kid, Clark Schmidt. He had a 3.12 ERA overall. Like I said, he was able to start a few games, but it was mostly long relief. Gave up 3 home runs in 25 1/3 innings at Yankee Stadium. Gets a little bit loose with the walks, about 4 walks per 9 innings, but is able to do a relatively solid job getting about 9 strikeouts per 9 innings, and The bullpen of the New York Yankees, no question about it. It does lose a few pieces like a Lucas Luque, but Michael King is someone that's able to give you multiple innings to be able to stem the tide. Albert Abreu is someone I do like for the team. They no longer have Aroldis Chapman, and quite frankly, I don't think that that's a bad thing, as Jonathan Loaizaga should be able to hold down the fort, and you've got Ron Metanacchio on some rest, so that's big. And for the San Francisco Giants, the real key for this team when they were able to win so many games 2 seasons ago was their bullpen, and I take a look at it now, and you got Scott Alexander, you've got the Rogers brothers, and Taylor and Tyler Rogers. Neither of those guys throw any sort of heat whatsoever. Camilo Doval is someone they do like. John Brebbia, not necessarily great, and for the San Francisco Giants, they scored as many runs as myself on opening day. I think that their lineup is a little bit better than that. They bring in Michael Conforto and J.D. Davis. I think that these guys have some upside. Thairo Estrada has always been solid at being able to move the line, as last season he was hitting right around a 260, but you really don't have a lot of power bats for this team. They really rely upon platooning with guys like Jock Peterson, Mike Yastrzemski, just being able to have good matchups in general, but I don't know if they're going to be able to find them against the Yankees. And we saw Aaron Judge pick up right where he left off last year on opening day, being able to hit that home run. Josh Donaldson is not someone that you're able to rely upon, but I do expect a relatively solid year out of Gleyber Torres. He goes deep on opening day. Last year, he was able to provide about a .310 on base. He had 24 home runs. I recognize that he had a fall off in the previous few seasons, but I expect a good year out of him. Anthony Volpe is a popular pick for Rookie of the Year. I like his skill set. DJ LeMahieu does a good job of getting on base. Anthony Rizzo doesn't hit for great average, but he does a good job of being able to draw some walks, and I do think that Giancarlo Stanton, after he hit like a 220, 225 last year, he's going to be able to pick it up as well. So I do expect Clark Schmidt to be able to give a relatively solid start. I do think that Alex Cobb is going to be able to pick it up just a little bit as well, but you got to keep in mind this is Yankee Stadium, and at Yankee Stadium, balls that would be just routine pop flies in most other ballparks, they go out in this environment, and I do think that both of these teams are going to rely upon their bullpens, and I've got some question marks when it comes to this Giants bullpen, and the Yankees, they certainly do have power. I set my total at 8.7, so you're at 8.5. Going to be looking at the over, and with the Yankees, willing to lay the minus 135 that I'm seeing with them, and that'll wrap things up for the Saturday edition of the Baseball Betting Show, now a part of the VSiN family of podcasts. A big thanks to our good friend Danny Vietti over at CBS Sports for joining me in the last segment. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, the Baseball Betting Show, you're able to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you do have one of two ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter timeline at GNN_41. Keep in mind, letters EM. Naming does not matter. As per usual, please just send these into the timeline, and the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. Coming at you guys every single day throughout the baseball season, and that means I'm coming at you once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.